Welcome to I'm Not Joking, the podcast where a behavioral scientist examines what it's like to live a humorous life. Glimpse into the lives of the funniest people in entertainment, business, and science as your host, Dr. Peter McGraw, explores their habits, motivations, and secrets to success. Get ready to fire up your brain and your funny bone. Now, here's your host.
Welcome to I'm Not Joking, the podcast that looks at the lives of funny people. I'm Peter McGraw. Today's guest is Jen O'Donnell.
Hello.
Jen is a Los Angeles-based stand-up comedian, producer, host, writer, and reality TV development consultant.
Oh my gosh, you did it all. Wait, is there more?
There's more.
Oh boy.
She's the producer and host of the Ladies Room Comedy Show and the podcast Take Down the Patriarchy with Solange and Jen.
That's it. That's pretty much everything I think about me. I'm also from Buffalo, New York. That's maybe important for people to know.
It might come up.
Yeah, it could come up. People love people from Buffalo.
Welcome, Jen.
Hello. Hi. I didn't know you were going to throw it to me. I decided to say hello early on, just in case.
You know what? I want to compliment you as being the first woman on the podcast to break the rules.
Oh, I broke the rules already?
Mm-hmm.
What did I do?
Well, there's these sort of implicit rules about like waiting for your moment.
Oh, I would break that rule.
Yeah,
Why? I don't know.
I think it's great.
I didn't even realize there was a rule to be broken, but I like to break some rules.
Well, you're a comedian.
I do, yeah. So I guess it's the first rule of being a comedian is break the rules.
You know, if I were to use correlation to infer causation, it would suggest that you have a bright future.
Oh, wow.
So let me tell you why.
Okay.
Because off the top of my head, the other two comedians to break the rules, Neil Brennan, co-creator of Chappelle Show,
a big rule breaker,
and the recent, I don't know if he won an award for it. He should, Netflix 3 Mic special.
Yeah, which is pretty classic.
It's very good.
It's also a rule breaking special.
It is,
I would
indeed.
say.
Yes, and then Jimmy Carr.
Wow. I'm the first rule breaking woman. This is great.
I mean, I don't mean to. Yeah, I could also say you're probably younger than those two. Also, so you're the rule breaking millennial.
Makes sense. I mean, women are socialized to not break the rules because that's how we survive in the world. So there's that. I mean, it's true. It's like it's the reason why women tend to be much better students, why they tend to do well in school, because school is a system of follow the rules, do what the teacher says, and you will be rewarded.
Yes.
And then when women who are high achieving and smart get into the real world, they tend to get into positions where you are doing other people's work for them and not breaking the rules and being rewarded for that. And you have to break rules to be successful, but nobody's going to tell you that in a brick building that depends on people following the rules. So
there you go.
My grandmother told me that when I was in second grade, my teacher told me that I thought outside of the box. And my grandmother was like your classic 1950s school teacher. And actually my mother told me the story, and she was like, as soon as I told your grandma that, who by the way is called MAGA, it's unfortunate.
MAGA?
Yeah, MAGA is the name, like MAGA. So when I write MAGA, like it's Make America Great Again.
Oh.
We didn't buy the domain name either. And but so she tells my grandma this. She's like, oh, her teacher said that she thinks outside the box. And my grandma was like, oh, that's not good.
Oh, I see.
Because it's not good, especially for a woman. And she was taught that it's not good because you're not going to your path is just going to be harder. And that's the truth. But I think sometimes it's supposed to be.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, my belief is anything worth doing is going to be difficult.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so yeah, the only reason why I brought up your gender was because of your Take Down the Patriarchy.
Yeah, I mean, I
podcast.
have two comedy things that are very just gendered anyway.
Yes.
So it's kind of,
in Ladies Room Comedy
yeah, it's
Show.
kind of impossible to really ignore that. And I'm totally cool with that because I think that the point of it is to generate conversation. Mm-hmm. So, it's something that I don't really want to ignore. So I think that it's totally fine too.
Good, because I want to talk about that too.
Yeah.
But first,
okay.
If you weren't working as a stand-up comedian, producer, host, writer, or reality TV development consultant, or podcaster,
But those are so many things.
what would you be doing?
Does that mean that I never left Buffalo? Or this
No.
could just be literally anything in the whole world?
Yeah.
or multiverse?
You answer it as you like.
Okay. This is great because this is a good exercise for me. Because I had a dream recently that I went to see my doctor and he told me that the air quality in LA was so bad that I was going to die and I had to leave and like move to Arizona. And I was like, so relieved. I was like, oh, I have to give up on my dreams. Thank God. It was like a relief.
So you're going to retire.
Yeah.
You retired.
Yeah. It was a lung doctor and he was like, you have to move to like Sedona where the air is clear. And I was like, thank God. Like I had this excuse to like start over. I would be really good at being some kind of investigator for sure.
Oh.
And I have done that a lot in my reality TV work. Like when you're a reality TV development producer, especially like your job is to be like just like a really scrappy investigator because you have no money, you have no budget, and you basically have to get people to trust you and like you and tell you information that they wouldn't tell anybody. So I would be a great investigator, like meaning like private investigator or like an investigative journalist, something like that. But I also like my dream is that like somebody just recruits me for like a top secret think tank and I have to be like a futurist or somebody who has to like develop a utopia. That would be the dream. I don't know how good I would be at that, but the first one I would be really great at. I could get better at the second one.
I like that I asked you what you would be doing and then you gave me your alternative world.
Yeah.
And then the fantasy.
And then the fantasy
of, your
of that
world.
It's true. Because I literally went down that rabbit hole and I was like, okay, if I was an investigator or an investigative journalist, then I'd be living paycheck to paycheck. And I would have to probably like go and live in different cities and like in shitty hotel rooms. And I would be like working for nothing. So then I created the fantasy of that
the
world.
think tank, the well-funded
the top
think tank.
secret think tank that I have like a jacuzzi and I can look at the stars every night. That's it. That's all I really want.
You know, this, first of all, I think these futurists, I hung out one day with a bunch of futurists.
Ugh, they're my favorite.
Well, talk about a job with no consequences.
Right? Like nobody's holding you to anything. It's great.
You know, the other thing that I think is really fun about being a futurist is because it's like this, I actually think it's a lot like being a comedian in a sense. So let me make a case. So on one hand, you need to be doing research, reading, paying attention, you know, like you need to
have to be very well immersed in the present.
Yes.
Yeah.
You need to be paying attention.
For sure.
And good comedians pay attention.
Yeah.
Then you also need to relax.
Mm-hmm.
You need to break away from it and do pleasurable things and allow your mind to kind of work through these things and have these insights.
To really wander. Yeah.
The average comedian does that way better than they do the first part.
Right. Yep. Okay.
But my argument is you need both.
Yep. In order to, that makes sense.
In order to produce brilliant ideas.
Yeah. Which the pressure of producing brilliant ideas, you would think that as a TV development person, that would be the opposite of what my dream job would be. Because that's what, when you're in reality TV development, it's like you're a salesperson, right? Like you are trying to sell things to networks. It has nothing to do with like the most original concept that's ever been created. It's like you are trying to sell a product that people will watch. Mm-hmm. So in some ways, like sometimes those like really out of the box, like crazy things are the best thing that ever happened. But most of the time you're looking for like some freak show on YouTube who has like a really crazy following and seeing if TLC will buy that show.
Yeah. So you're saying is that part of the reason that people complain about television as not being wholly original, you know, kind of redundant and so on, is because the people who are buying the shows, they're not risk takers.
Right. This is actually one of my favorite conversations. I've been thinking about this a lot lately because they're all like all of the
by
people.
the way, listeners, Jen just sat bolt upright.
Because so I see so many tweets lately that are like, hey, producers, why don't you guys stop making the same movies from the same books and the same scripts and the same universe all the time? We want to watch new things. And I'm like, no, you bitches don't. You never fucking watch new things. Nobody does. And what's interesting, like, And so in TV, to be a producer who is
Can we step back for a second?
Yeah.
Because I want to hear about this. I want to hear, what does it mean to be a reality TV producer? Like, so what is it that makes, when you put reality TV development consultant, instead of just saying TV development consultant,
the
what's
development
the
part is the difference.
Okay.
Because I basically work on things that go to pilot and then I'm done forever. And then I start on a brand new thing.
So the development consultant is you're like a incubator.
Exactly.
Or an accelerator.
Yep. So basically, I was staff for a long time at companies who would pay me to like sit at a desk and come up with ideas, which I really thought was my dream job for a long time. But that has its handcuffs, especially in reality. So basically, when I was staff, that meant that I was just like sort of at their beck and call. It'd be like, come join this weird meeting with this weird talent. Or it would mean that I found something in a weird article, or I had heard about something at a bar when I was at this last shoot. And I was like, you just send me out to this place and with a cheap camera and like get an interview and see if something's good.
I see.
So basically, you're there for that original like nugget of the idea, and your goal is to sell that nugget of an idea either like with a sizzle reel or with like a paper treatment that you write to a network who basically gives you
a deck.
Yep.
Yes.
I've decked some decks before. Great deck maker. If anybody needs a deck, call me up. Great deck maker. I mean, you're doing that most of the time. You're Skyping people, you're making decks.
Okay.
And the goal is basically to get a $10,000 development deal from a network, because your job as a development person depends on that. Like, it's like, that's your quote unquote sale.
I see.
Why am I talking about this again?
Because
it's giving me anxiety.
because you said, I want to talk about this, about people that want new stuff.
Yeah.
But I just want people to understand exactly what you do.
Right.
Because I think that it's an interesting world.
People all the time will be like, you know what they should do a show about? This thing that I've never seen ever. And I'm like, yeah, that's been pitched 500 times. Right. Or like, people are like, we see the same thing all the time. But it's like, and this is related to women in comedy. So just like go with me for a second.
Okay.
Like, people are fed a really steady diet of like something that isn't much of a turn from what they're normally used to. So and even still, I watch TV because it's my job, but it's like just like tedious. And I'm watching, like, I'm at my parents' house and they're like straight cable people. They like have watched the same sitcoms over and over. And I'm just like flipping through the cable networks and I'm like, all of these shows are still the exact same thing. Like, the same shows have been on since I started this job and everybody is still watching the same things.
And you're talking about reality in particular, or just TV in
particular,
general?
I guess, to keep it simple, reality in particular. So you're seeing the same stuff. And to take a risk and show people things in worlds that they've never seen is just so much of a leap for audiences that the people who are making those decisions, networks, advertisers, they aren't people who are risk takers in general.
No,
like you said,
right.
Those are people who have like the golden handcuffs of a $2.5 million house in LA, which is a 3-bedroom house with maybe a pool. It's like not a glamorous life. Like, you're really struggling to keep up paying for childcare, like, you know, keeping up with working 12-hour days, and like that's the job. And you are basically saying yes to the best bet you can see. Like, you're not going rogue.
Yeah, you want something that's going to be good enough.
Yeah. And that's what television is.
Okay.
So,
you know, to me, I think like there are innovations, but your argument is that they're incremental. You know, they're not truly disruptive. So, so the example I have, I couldn't tell you why I watched it. Maybe people had conversations about it, just word of mouth. Was I watched a couple episodes of the new Queer Eye for the Straight Guy on Netflix.
Yeah, which is, I think, one of the best done new shows right now.
I agree, because I remember watching the old version of it back in the day, not coincidentally around the time where I started taking better care of
Just taking some
Myself.
notes, getting some tips, just giving it, maybe take a few. Okay.
I see.
Lovely guacamole recipe, perhaps.
That for listeners who haven't seen the show, it's worth watching because what they've done is they've made the show psychological, and emotional, and not just physical.
And they also have figured out how to basically bring in perspectives of people who would have no business watching the show in the first place.
Tell me more. What do you mean?
Like, I'm thinking of maybe the first or second episode.
I just wrote down. I'm making a note for the exhibits, and I wrote "Queer Eye for the Short Guy,"
which is probably a show I've pitched before. So we do a lot of pun changing. Like we'll take stacks of index cards that have different words on them, like Mormon matchmaker. Or like
the polygamy matchmaker.
Yeah, like you take. Oh, we've pitched that. Yeah. You take buzzwords and then just like Amish makeover, or like it's like we've really done it. And guess what? You come up with good shows.
You know what? Actually, I love this idea.
Yeah. You really do, because that's the thing. People they see extreme, they see makeover, and they like know what they're getting into, and that's why they're slipping into TV. Like that's what they want, what they have already eaten before, and they don't want you to introduce something new. Mm-hmm. But then they just constantly tell you, they meaning the audience and they meaning the buyers, the networks, that they want disruptors and they want the next big thing. Yes, but nobody really does, and it's annoying.
There are people who do want it. It's just they're a small audience. They don't watch network television to begin with.
Exactly. So nobody's catering to them.
And they're getting it on YouTube.
Right. So they can go and find
Instagram
those things.
And stuff like that.
So I guess in some ways I kind of defend the quote unquote producer, the network, a lot when I see sort of the layman,
yes, that's what started this.
Saying like, where's all the original stuff? Like, and it's like, you're not going to watch it. Mm-hmm. You're going to demand it. And then because the thing is that it's already there and you could find it, but you're not watching it. Yeah. So who's going to trust that you're going to actually put your money where your mouth is?
And an advertising model really doesn't support it.
No, not at all.
The new subscription models that are starting to get popular, obviously Netflix and Hulu are the most prominent. Well, HBO and so on. There's a place, I think, for some of that.
Yeah.
Although still they're like Netflix is just basically, I'm worried that Netflix is going to cause the world to run out of jokes.
Oh yeah, because they just have this bandwidth that's incredible.
It
might have already happened and we don't know it.
It's they talk about an infinite number of monkeys and an infinite number of. I mean,
sometimes I like to think that it's already happened.
I'm just like, whoa, no, but what's interesting though too is that, and this might get back to what you were talking about women in comedy, and how everything just so we talked about just briefly about Neil Brennan's show. Mm-hmm. So that show felt different.
Yep.
And it preceded Hannah Gadsby's Nanette, which also did a little bit of
different.
And people went crazy over Nanette. Mm-hmm. And all she did was get serious for the second half of the
did some storytelling. Like all she did was the oldest art that has ever been invented, and people are like, "What is this new nonsense?"
Comedy that's not
literally
funny.
Our one original, our oldest form of storytelling, or our oldest form of art. People are like, "What is this new thing?"
Where a comedian forgoes laughs, which I think is really interesting.
And then because they do, it basically snowballs. And when you can do it right, you really do it right.
Yeah, you have to do it well. That's right. Okay, so you're going to be a futurist.
Yeah, I would like to be a futurist, mostly so that I can just change all the rules for the world. Because there's 5 to 10 people really in control, and I just want to be one of those people. Is that too much to ask?
Are you an Illuminati believer?
Well, because you can't work on, I'm just going to say Ancient Aliens as if that's the show I do work on, because it encompasses all of the shows I do work on.
Okay.
You can't work on a show like that and not just every once in a while be like, there's something to it. There's something to it. I'm not really. I really like to entertain those ideas because they're entertaining, really.
Well, it's not a stretch to add a lot more people to that group and basically talk about oligarchies
Yeah,
and things
totally.
like that. I mean, that
It's not
there's
too
good
much-
evidence
Exactly.
that the world is truly
Yes.
ruled by a small, relatively small, compared to 9 billion,
Right.
people who hold a lot of sway.
I don't think it's too much of a stretch at all.
Okay.
Tune in next
five-
week.
When's Jay-Z and Beyonce making that?
See,
list?
I think that you have your sort of your
You're going to
you
answer
have,
this
like-
question seriously.
you've got like your red herrings. Your
Yes,
you
of
know,
course. Yeah,
you
yeah.
have to
That's to
because
throw
it's
people off the
entertaining.
trail.
They're just throwing them off the trail,
Of course.
which I love, which means they really are Illuminati. No, I'm kidding. So yeah, I would love to be a futurist. I would love to. I don't know. I feel like I'm maybe sometimes born like a little bit too early, and now I'm just like really bored with everything.
Oh, that's interesting. You know, I feel lucky about when I was born.
Oh God, I feel super lucky that I was born maybe now instead of 100 years ago.
So for you especially,
Yeah.
no doubt.
I'm a human now, apparently.
Yes.
I mean, supposedly, but that was up for debate 100 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
People forget that.
All right. So I want to talk about
Yeah.
this. This is going to get a little heavy and we'll get back to some of this other
Yeah,
the-
and
the
I'll
fun stuff.
try to make some jokes and break the rules during the heaviness
Sweet.
if I can.
Thank you. So you have a podcast called Take Down the Patriarchy.
Yes,
And so obviously
it's
this
pretty subtle title. Yeah,
it's aspirational.
it's a pretty aspirational, subtle title. What could that be about?
Yes.
No idea.
So I want to ask you about an idea that I've been I kind of not even stumbled on the idea. I was kind of puzzling over the sort of rise of some of these male media personalities, the Joe Rogans and
Yeah.
the Jordan Petersons
Oh,
and so
yeah.
on of the world, those
I'm
guys.
excited. I sat up again, but not physically, just like I lit up.
And so I was sort of puzzling over that.
Yeah,
That
okay.
idea. And so this idea, so you said 100 years ago, it would have sucked to be Jen O'Donnell.
For sure.
And are you Irish?
I'm Irish.
So it would have been especially bad.
Oh, yeah. And I can tell you exactly what my life would have been because it was my great-great-grandmother's life.
Which is what?
Well, I'm 31 right now. And when I was 27, I had a pulmonary embolism. So I for sure would have died instead of kept living.
Okay.
But I also,
Congratulations.
thank you so much. But I also would have had 5 to 6 children. Some of them may not have made it.
Yes.
I may not have made it.
Yes.
I would have fulfilled my duty as a woman on the earth, which is to have children.
Yes.
Which also as a person who would like to someday raise humans, I also still want to have children. I would just like to live through it and also be able to make my own choices and to live my own life as well, which now for the first time in the eternity of humankind is possible for me. So I would be, basically living on a farm in Ireland and eating potatoes, which by the way, I don't like.
Okay. Who
The
does?
famine is in my DNA, you
Yeah.
know, like I just don't really like them.
I don't either.
I think they're kind of basic.
I
There's
don't
so
think
many better
anyone
foods to eat.
really likes potatoes.
Well, people do. They get mad. Like, I don't like French fries. People are like, fuck you. Like,
okay.
they get really upset about this.
I
So
don't even
anyway,
consider
I would
French
have-
fry a potato.
I would have not been afforded the opportunity to travel the world, get an education, pursue an art.
Okay. So, this is perfect.
Yeah.
So, as I was puzzling over these guys, I was thinking about the patriarchy, this idea, the notion of oppression and the conversation that's happening now more than ever. I mean, well, look, not certainly a lot now.
Yeah,
I mean,
I agree.
There was
Now
an
more
Equal
than
Rights
ever.
Amendment.
Yeah.
And there was a time where it was also at the forefront.
Totally. But this is the first time that it's really in the cultural zeitgeist. And I think and hope that there's sort of action versus just conversation.
I think so too, and I'm supportive of it.
Yeah.
I've considered
But,
myself a
no.
feminist. What I was puzzling over is like why people aren't, or why are young men looking to these guys and listening to them and hearing the way they talk
Yeah.
about stuff. And I think I have an answer to it. Of course I do. And it's this: your partner 100 years ago
Yes.
would have benefited greatly from the patriarchy.
Yes. You mean my partner or
The man who you
man,
married
yeah.
and impregnated you 5 to 7 times.
Because the systems that are in place for that man in the patriarchy are he gets the dole and
Yes.
you can line up because he has the ticket because he had worked at the factory, and you get bread because you all subscribe to this.
Yes, that's right.
And then the church is there and they'll be able to cover any medical expenses. But in order to get that money from the church, you have to have followed all their rules of the patriarchy. And as you know, the Catholic Church,
that's right.
you know, not a lot of above the line stuff. So
Indeed.
anyway, yes.
Yes.
It kind of sucked.
Okay. So if you had said to him, boy, man, you have so much privilege in the world.
Yes. Right.
It's so easy to be you.
He would be like, "Are you out of your fucking mind?"
Exactly. Yeah. So you know, because he's out tilling the land and breaking his back and doing, you know what I mean, and
Right.
trying to provide and doing all
And
this kind
he
of
would
stuff.
also in turn say that I had all the privilege because I was kept safe and I didn't have to toil, and all I had to do was keep a home, and he afforded me the privilege of being able to keep that home.
Yeah. Depending on the man, I'm hoping you have good taste.
I hope so too. I think this imaginary guy needs a name, like Seamus O'Toole or something. That's what I like. Seamus O'Toole.
Seamus the Tool.
Yeah, that's what they call him at the bar. He's a drunk.
Is it he? You know, he also might truly adore you and care about
Totally,
you and
yeah.
want to and be willing to break his back because he
And also, this is important, provide an opportunity for his offspring.
Indeed.
That's a big one.
Yes, of
like
course.
all of these sacrifices are to ensure that this generation continues, which I find very noble and great and something we should keep doing.
And by the way, those motivations are no different for men
Right.
and women.
Exactly.
I mean, that's so fast forward ahead 100 years. I think the point, what I think is interesting is that there's a lot of men struggling in the world, right? They're incarcerated, they're homeless, they're suffering from mental illness, they're toiling in coal mines and factories, they're still doing backbreaking work, and et cetera, et cetera. And frankly, they're just not that sophisticated because the world doesn't allow most people to get sophisticated.
Yes.
And
especially now, because we're in an information age where toiling in a coal mine is increasingly becoming not a way to make a living or a sustainable life.
It's a harder job.
Yeah.
That's right. And so if you're lucky, you might be a coal miner. If you're not lucky, you might be unemployed or cooking meth or
and
doing whatever.
Being on like a subreddit about incels or something.
Indeed. Right. So the point is like, you know, now you can't even get a woman.
Right.
You know, and
so, now they're the ones complaining.
Well, but that's exactly
what they think.
So, but to me, that's exactly the point, right? Is that like if the conversation becomes, again, I'm by no means an expert here.
Yeah.
If the conversation becomes, guys, look how great you have it. Look how bad we have it. We need to equal the playing field.
They're like, what are you even talking about?
It's a very difficult conversation to have versus saying, look at all the ways women have it difficult. Look at all the ways that men have it difficult. We both live in a system that creates these difficulties. There's an asymmetry, obviously, that the difficulties are different. And the historical inequalities were much greater.
Yeah.
You know, it becomes my point is it just becomes a different conversation.
Yes. And I think that I truly believe that with everybody I've spoken to and everything that I've read and all of the imaginings I've done for the future, that system that you're talking about that isn't working anymore is patriarchal rule.
I'm not debating that.
Yeah, right. So
that's, to me, it's not about the cause. It's about how do you approach the solution.
And I also think, and I don't know, maybe I'll take this back someday, but I also think that there was probably a time where that patriarchal system was exactly the best we could do. Like that was maybe the best way for us to survive as a species. But now we're coming to an age where we no longer need the same things that we needed to survive. So, and I think a lot of probably men don't also understand that feminism wants to save them from that. Like feminism could help this guy who has had a lifetime of this toxic masculinity forced down his throat, that if he doesn't provide for a family, if he doesn't like have, you know, the hottest porn star wife, or, you know, like all of those things that are expected of him, that he's depressed and unemployed, and all of those struggles could be taken away if we all, like, I think the easiest way to always put it is like, we have mistaken the half for the whole for as long as we've ever been on this earth.
That's interesting.
And
phrase.
so like, what if everybody was empowered, and what if everybody was like running on full brain function?
Mm-hmm.
We would be on vacation right now in Europa, and I would have a hot tub looking at stars,
and you would
on a different planet.
And you would have to have a new comedy show and a new podcast.
I would love it.
I get it.
Which is, I'll gladly retire my podcast.
I get it. Yeah, I think like, you know, the way I flip this. So I liked what you.
Yeah, I was going to say the Joe Rogan thing, though.
Please.
So this is also something I'll probably regret saying, but like Joe Rogan is to me like the quintessential version of like male mediocrity rising.
Okay.
Like, I think that he is like smart and talented and interesting and funny. And guess what? There are 10 women I know who are just as talented as he is, but the world isn't set up for them to succeed as easily. And nobody likes to hear that they don't work hard, and nobody likes to hear that they didn't start from nothing and struggle, because he did. He did all of those
That's exactly
things.
the point, right? Yes.
And so nobody wants to hear that. And I think he does have a perspective that's important to share, and that he also has a really, really heavy burden that I sympathize a bit, because he has their ears, and that's a lot of responsibility. I don't know if I can handle that much responsibility ever. So it's tough. And I think that people really respond to him because he is like a representation of a guy who's just like us. And the woman who's just like us is kind of something that has never been invented.
Yeah, I think that I agree with you. I agree with you that, like, I mean, I might push back on the mediocrity thing, because I mean, that guy at the very least has a motor, unlike most people on the planet.
You're totally right. And so mediocrity, I guess, when I'm putting him in a lineup of people who, if they had the same audience lined up and the same network execs who saw themselves in his jokes,
I see, and
who knew that there were a rabid audience who would also see themselves in his jokes. Whereas, like, I don't know, I guess what I was thinking about this on the way here. I went to a women's open mic last night, which is something that is a pretty common occurrence, right? There's open mics, and legally you can't tell men not to come, but only women go up, right? So sometimes there's men in the audience, sometimes there's not. But mostly when you're at an open mic, there's not really an audience, right? Like, it's
just the other people waiting to get
comics
on stage.
So, you know, people talk all the time like, well, what are you going to do when you're out of that safe space, right? They love to say that. And what I was thinking about is that, okay, yeah, sure. It's probably a safe space because you have familiar faces in the audience, and you also know that you can walk to your car safely and not feel uncomfortable because you may have said something to piss somebody off. And so it's just like nice to see other women who you know who are sort of there, right? Or even if you don't know them, just other people who kind of get it and who are on the same journey as you. So there's that. But there's another layer to it, which is that when those women are in the audience listening to your jokes, those women have spent a lifetime empathizing and understanding your perspective.
Okay.
So if I'm telling a joke about a sports bra to them, it's going to go really well if it's a good joke, right? But they're like, I can work out that joke, and there's some things that they'll really like and some things that they won't, but I can be like, okay, I can workshop this because the people here, which is 50% of the world,
indeed,
understand it. But I could take that same joke to a regular open mic, which I will. And if there's 3 women,
yes,
they might giggle, but you're going to laugh a little bit less if other people aren't really quite getting it. And then I'm saying these jokes to these men who aren't going to get it. So there's no real way to like workshop things that they may not understand. Now, women, if you flip it, right, you're like, well, women go and they laugh at things male comedians say, but that's because we've seen the male perspective and have only been given the male perspective in the books we read in school, in the movies we watch.
Right.
So we are so conditioned to see their point of view.
The jockstrap trap joke.
Yeah, like
lands.
so we laugh. Yeah.
Right.
So we laugh because we've spent our whole lives trying to get the joke. And then for the first time are being told that they should try to get the joke because there's half of the world that they haven't really listened to. And it's like their minds hurt way too much to understand that. And then they tell us to die on the internet. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I understand. It's a difficult. I trust me. I'm not excuse making. I'm just trying to puzzle.
Because
I'm just puzzling over this phenomenon.
Totally, yeah.
And I think. And the idea, I believe this when it comes to any type of social justice, is that, look, you needed the whites in South Africa to hand over power.
Right.
You know what I mean?
People do not like to hand over power.
The people in privilege need to come along, and it helps with both a carrot and a stick.
Totally.
And so in any case, it's just, I'm not, this is,
but it's a good exercise though, because then you think, well, what's the cure for that?
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know. I honestly feel like sometimes knowing that you actually don't want all the power is a really good thing.
That's interesting.
Because I don't know. Like when
you
I left,
you already just said, I'm not sure I'd want all that responsibility.
I don't know if I would want that.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's good for one person to have that much power.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know, maybe it comes from, like, I left my job in reality TV because I wanted to pursue stand-up and writing more. And people thought I was pretty nuts.
This is perfect because this is what I'm about to say. What are you working on?
Oh, I love it. Well,
so this is a good segue.
So that was about a year and a half ago. Okay. In the meantime, I had hip surgery, which was hilarious because I quit my job to do stand-up. And then I literally couldn't stand up. And now I might have to have shoulder surgery, which would be extra funny because then I couldn't write. It's just, I'm
glad
things.
You were born when you were born.
I know, right? I'd be dead. It sounds like I'm making up all of these elements. I just realized how pathetic this must sound, but I'm fine. And so I left my job and I was getting paid. Like, I got paid a lot of money. And even when we were talking about liking LA, like, I've always loved LA and I've had a great life here and I've been here almost 10 years. And I'm like, only in the last year has it really felt hard. And that's because I voluntarily decided to make much less money than I've ever made.
So as an aside, on the way, when we were setting up, I was talking about we're in LA right now, and I was saying how much I like LA. Yeah. But I've never spent more than a month here, right. And so
I was like, it took me 8 years, yes. But 8.5 about to really.
I do think LA is this is just a total digression. It's like most major cities, like it's a lot easier to. It's great if you're wealthy.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Like I have a New York price that I would live for. And so I could never move to New York. That's what
yes. I mean, if you make $1 million a year,
it's a wonderful place to live.
New York is amazing.
Yeah. But
you make if you make $100,000 a year, which almost anywhere else in the country is like outstanding money. To live a good life, you feel like a pauper in that place.
Yeah. And when you're working in reality TV and that's how much money you make and you still can't buy a house and you're like, this is what my job will still look like in 20 years. And by the way, this is what I was going to say. All the richest, most powerful people who you work for and see day to day and hear their ideas day to day and know their lives day to day. And you're like, wow, I don't want that life.
Oh, it's like careful what you wish for.
Yeah. And that's the same thing where that power conversation comes into play too, because I think that the stories we tell are really important. The words we say are really important because we are really formulating. We are people who create and
you reach a lot of people.
You do. And it is and I think if you don't take that very seriously, you should. And maybe that's just me being really self-important and thinking that the things that we make, my YouTube videos get dozens of views. So, but I mean, when you're working in reality and you know that you get sent to this dinner, right, in the middle of the swamps, because this family business is really cool and you got to like kind of shake them out, see if they have the personalities.
To be the next Duck Dynasty.
Totally.
Yes.
And then you think 20 steps down the road and you think about that bearded Duck Dynasty guy on the cover of Time magazine telling everybody that God hates gay people. And you're like, there was a moment where I could have sent an email that said, I don't think they have what it takes. And like I just don't think that there's a pile of money that I could sleep on and be okay with that. And also it's just like, I don't like miss my family enough.
By the way, this city is always burning down. It's constantly burning down.
It always, yeah.
I
live right by a fire station, so I'm so not used to it. Like if a plane went overhead, I would be like, we better stop. But I didn't even hear it.
Oh, I see. Only because you're trying to run a podcast here. Yes.
So yeah, I just think that it is a lot of responsibility. And that's even when I'm writing jokes, like there's jokes that I don't do anymore because I'm like, well, it's funny and it works. It's kind of like low-hanging fruit. Like maybe it wasn't that funny, but what it also does is I'm trying to think of an example of the joke.
Wait, so I want to ask you about this. So you set a constraint on what you'll joke about.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And what I was also going to say is I don't miss my family to like chase Sasquatch for my whole career in Los Angeles. Like I could be working in advertising in Buffalo and be doing something else versus something that I'm going to spend my whole life doing and then perhaps feel really guilty about because I've put these messages into the world and I've created, I've plucked people from obscurity and given them a microphone and that's on you.
I see.
Like we're only, So when I tell jokes, it's almost the same thing. And so what I'm thinking of is I used to tell this joke about how I wasn't a sexy drunk. I was a snack drunk. And like I would go home and have wild snacks was the joke.
Okay.
And like wake up with a pizza box, and be like, what happened? I have to get tested. And then the joke was for diabetes. And like everybody would laugh and like, whatever, it was fine. It was like an early joke. And I once was, I don't know, there was a girl who had diabetes and I was talking to her and there's a lot you don't know about diabetes and it's also not really caused by eating too much. Like there's so many different, and then I go down this hole where I'm like, well, if I say that joke about diabetes, people are always going to think that about diabetes and then people with diabetes have struggle and then there's going to be less money that's given to diabetes funds because people think it's a lazy people disease. And then you just throw it out. And I'm like, there's probably so many other people who just like don't care about this. But also it wasn't that funny of a joke anyway. So,
but what if it was really funny? Then the tension goes up. If
it's so funny and it's saying something important, then that's the best thing ever.
Yeah, I get it.
I just like if I have 5 minutes and I'm not saying something that I think is important, then why did I drive an hour into Hollywood during traffic? And why am I wearing tights that hurt? And why did I put rollers in my hair? Like, it just doesn't seem worth it to me.
Audience, Jen has a show after this.
Yes, I do. So I've got tights on and I got rollers in my hair. No, I took them out, but I do.
I get it.
Yeah.
That's kind of the next level stuff, right? So
yeah,
I always like to say that comedians foremost want ha-ha, which is why
which is what we talked about. Yeah. The aha and the ha-ha.
That's right. And so you said it's not that funny a joke.
Right.
But then I said, if it was funny,
but
now you have the ha-ha.
If it was so funny, I don't know. I'm like,
you want the aha.
Yeah. Or is there something that's so funny? I don't even know. And maybe, again, this doesn't make me your like comic or your average comic who you're used to and who's easy to digest. So I think that, but because I know that about myself, I guess I've chosen to lean into it instead of lean away from it. One, because I think we're in a world that's changing that will give me opportunities and it'll be worth that bet. But frankly, it's a bet.
And,
having a podcast called Take Down the Patriarchy, having an all-female stand-up show, that means that male stand-up comics don't care about me in LA, right? So they're not going to this is a really broad generalization, but like they're not like, oh, maybe she'll put me on her show.
Yes, I
so
get
you
it.
kind of take yourself out of like a whole half of the game in a way, because that's the point of producing a show, is so that you have something that's yours, so that you can book people who you think are funny, so you can build community. And so I've kind of taken myself from half of that.
It's
with
even,
my
and
own
it's
show.
more than half, because
Right.
there's more than 50% male
Totally.
comics.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you're making a bet.
Thank you.
I think it's good.
Can
And
I have $20?
I'll tell you why I think that, because so first of all, if you're just doing what everyone else is doing, it just became a lot harder to be successful.
Yeah. And you have
Because
to be really good at it, doing
yes,
what
it
everybody
gets
else is
really
doing.
hard if you just
Which is
do
what
everything
I think
everyone else does.
Joe Rogan is. That's what I kind of feel like.
Oh, see, okay, well,
He's the best at doing what everybody else is doing, which,
he was early too.
and I think I'm kind of picking on him right now because he just came up. But like, I think that's a lot of people, and that bores me really fast.
I think that's fair. I think that's fair to say that if you look at podcasts, perhaps even this one run by straight white men,
Mhm.
you get a lot of the same stuff. It's not that different. You
Yeah.
know? And so, and I have to tell you is that I get bored easily. And so I'm looking for the things that are different.
Yeah,
and,
right,
and so
right.
on. And so, but I also believe, I'm a marketing professor. And so I have to teach marketing. So there's already been like a bunch of marketing related lessons
Yes,
with what we were just talking about. So for instance, when you were talking about workshopping jokes with a mostly female audience,
Right.
and the opportunities that provides, well, that certainly makes sense from a business standpoint, because the average comedy club audience is 50% women.
Right.
And so if you can allow yourself to make them laugh and get the jokes to the next level, which can also get their partners,
Exactly.
friends, male friends
Yes.
that are laughing, now you have an edge.
Yes. And I dream about that conversation they have in the car on the way home.
Indeed.
Where he's like, wait, I don't get it. And then she tells him something that is something that's just like so rudimentary about the female experience. And then that turns into this nugget that he then takes to the office and knows. So it's like, in my mind, it really does. I don't know if you notice, I really tend to go down some rabbit holes here. But that's how I'm like, comedy can save the world, because it's the quickest, easiest, most painless way to empathize with people who you may not normally understand.
Yes. Do you have like a phrase that you use to like, so I'm trying to, I have to name these podcasts.
Yeah,
And so I'm
okay.
already working on the name of this one. Like,
Yeah.
it's like this sort of second level joke.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Do you have a way that you
Like
talk about it?
Just describe a next level thing.
Yeah, it's like the chaos theory of
Yeah.
joke telling. Like, let me see if I can reflect back what
Yeah.
you've been talking about.
I should have an answer for this, but I don't.
Ooh.
I mean, maybe, I don't know. Maybe I just haven't really dissected it enough.
Yeah, I mean, and you don't need to. You
Yeah.
don't need to label it, because it's just what you do.
Yeah.
It sounds to me that when it comes to your profession,
Mhm.
whether it be telling jokes or developing shows,
Yes.
you care about entertaining people. That's
Yes.
primary. You need to entertain people, or
Or else they're not looking anymore.
that's right. You can't make money and
There
make
are
a living.
other things to watch.
Indeed, there's tons of competition. You're willing, however, you're also willing to make some people uncomfortable in order to make other people highly entertained, right?
Yes.
That's this.
I am.
This is this
Yeah.
idea of I call it creating a chasm,
Yep.
right? So you polarize people.
Yes. There's a lot of risk involved in all of these things.
Of course, but I mean, I think
But,
that,
yeah, and realizing that is interesting.
but reward is always accompanied by risk.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like,
it's necessary.
it's necessary there,
Yeah.
at least to some degree, you
Yep.
know, at least high reward. And then the next part about it, this third element to it, is you want this to be a meaningful message,
Yeah.
or at least
Yeah.
a non-negative message, right? So it'd be okay to tell jokes that do no harm.
Yes.
But if you can do a joke that changes a perspective, again, into that aha.
I think the metaphor that just popped in my head is like the best, delicious, most well-made junk food that there is.
Okay.
Like,
Careful, this might be called making junk food
Yeah.
with Jen
Yeah,
O'Donnell.
delicious junk food.
junk food.
Yeah. Like,
Healthy junk food.
yeah, or like next level junk food, you know? Like, I'm from Buffalo. I love chicken
Now
wings,
you're mixing
right?
metaphors.
It's like, okay, so I'm from Buffalo. I love wings. I will really like, if I see like the wings at like 7-Eleven and they're just like sitting under the heat lamps and people are like, oh, wings, great. There's just like, there's a wing that's good and it's worth it. And then there's a terrible wing. And I'm just like, okay, you can eat the same thing, but I can show you how to eat the best one.
Okay.
You know? Does that make sense? Like, there's just better things out there that are still really great. You just have to give them a chance.
Yeah, I agree. I think, look, I'm on board. I love this. I love, as I
Chase
said,
the best one. Yeah, it's sort of what.
yeah, I love this perspective and this idea. It's just, I just didn't know if you had a, I mean, it's
Delicious
clearly,
junk food.
yeah, it clearly is sort of guides you.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so I want to do, okay, so you leave this job.
Yes.
And so now you've been sort of, you're on your own.
Yeah. So I'm basically, I'll go, like, I'll consult at different companies. So like they'll bring me in and, you know, either pay me hourly to like toss ideas out, and then I kind of shape them or tell them what networks they could go to, or they'll say like, hey, can you write a deck for us?
Mm-hmm.
I also have done just like a couple weeks of casting at a time where they, you know, get development money and they need 3 experts for a panel, or they need a food talent for this particular kind of food show. So I go down these like crazy rabbit holes. And that's the thing that I love the most about the job, is just like, I can climb any tree and I can like find like those people and those really interesting people in these worlds that you just like would never know about otherwise. And that's what I've always loved about TV.
This is your
And
investigator.
And it's heartbreaking too, because you meet so many fascinating people and you hear so many stories and you find these crazy worlds that like are like it's just like stranger than fiction. But then you take them to networks that get thousands of pitches a year, and maybe they get developed, maybe there's a pilot, but they go away. And then those people are still in my life. They're still texting me. They still wish me,
hopes,
you know,
yeah.
because like you get a phone call from somebody in Los Angeles who wants to give you a TV show. Like I always say that like I could just probably take a road trip across the country and stay for free everywhere I went, because I have so many friends and so many like little weird enclaves of just like stories that never were.
Yeah.
So that's what I love.
Sounds
the
like
most.
a book.
Yeah, it probably is. Yeah.
There's a book idea in there.
Yeah, there definitely
you know,
is.
it's more of a book than a show.
If only I didn't sign NDAs. So.
Yeah.
I mean, kinda. Yeah, that's what it.
Let's do like some more rapid fire stuff. I'm not sure.
Wait, you asked me a question and then I just like went on a whole. I never answered it.
No, I was just curious what you're up to.
Yeah. So, Ladies Room, Take Down the Patriarchy. I've got a couple new things kind of in the works that I'm working out. One that I interviewed you for, The Internet According to Jen, which is based off my newsletter, which kind of is a version of what I was just talking about. It's people who I think are like mini television shows that there is not a cable network for.
Are you saying?
I mean, maybe.
That's
I do, because I talk to just the most interesting people that I'm like, this is great. Maybe nobody's ready for this on cable. Maybe that's not a Netflix show, but like there is a nugget of something here and people should know about it.
I see. That's fun.
That's The Internet According to Jen.
I don't normally watch like when I do media, I don't normally consume my own media.
Because it's so painful.
But I did watch some of that.
Oh,
and
yeah.
You had some funny jokes that I really enjoyed.
Thank you.
I was like, I definitely have to get her on the pod. But
see,
I was blinking
useful.
too much.
Oh, really? I didn't.
Is there
a blink eraser?
No, I was just going to say, is there a hack for that? Like in television.
You know, what's interesting is this might make me a bad producer. I didn't notice you were blinking at all. But there's other people whose job that is. Like if you have an actual crew.
Yes.
I don't think that there's like some kind of blink hack.
Okay, I didn't know if there was.
Without getting your eyes really red.
Yeah,
I mean, the truth is that my job as a TV producer is to get you to cry as fast as possible. So
you failed.
Oh my God, yeah, I did.
All right, we're gonna do some rapid fire stuff.
Okay.
What are you saying?
Let me sip some water.
Yeah,
first,
that's not a problem.
Mm-hmm. I spilled some.
What are you saying no to?
What am I saying no to? Like a real example or like things in general saying no to?
You don't have to overthink it.
Okay, I won't overthink it. I'm saying no to things that aren't like going to make, this is so lame, but just things that aren't going to make the world a better place.
Okay. So this is
like I just turned down a job that I was like, I don't want my name on that.
Okay.
And I didn't say that. I said,
What job was it?
I'm really busy. I'll tell you after the podcast, but it's a production company ran by somebody who you just don't want to work for.
Got it. I understand. So you told them I'm curious about this. You told them that you were busy versus.
No, I said, this is what I said.
I don't
said,
do this kind of work.
I was like, frankly, I am on something right now, but also just as a heads up, this isn't something that I would have said yes to.
That's a hard no.
Yeah.
Do you have a rival, frenemy, or even an enemy who motivates you?
I'm really glad you asked this question because I was just talking about, do you follow Roxane Gay on Twitter?
I don't.
She is a writer, feminist, really, really like fascinating, talented, hilarious person. And she has an enemy that she talks about all the time. Mm-hmm. And it really bothers me that she does. And I'm like, what? Because I think it's just like, it's a bad form. And also me talking shit about Roxane Gay.
You just ventured into that
trouble. Yeah.
Hey, at least you're equal opportunity.
Yes. Because I just like when I see it, it's like there's this instinctual thing that I'm like, we're supposed to all be getting along, and this is a bad look for all of us. And she, the things that she tweets, she'll be like, my enemy had something in her home that I had in my home, so I got rid of it.
So the
it's
enemy
like
is unnamed.
Unnamed. People have theories about who it is. My theory is that it's Reese Witherspoon for a few reasons. But so and I'm like, okay, well, it bothers me so much that she's doing this, and also anytime there's really a lot of like onslaught of like people really getting on board for anything, I immediately shut down. Like I'm immediately like, you are wrong. Here's why. Like as soon as like there's just a mob forming,
you are a comic.
I have to be away from that mob.
You are such a comedian
really
thing
like,
to do.
Well, why does it bother me so much? Because everybody retweets it and they're like, oh my God, who's her enemy? I love this so much. This gives me life. Reply with gifts. And I'm like, this is so fucking annoying to me. But I'm like, is there a reason? Am I annoyed by it because I also have an enemy and I'm unwilling to admit that to myself? And she is like fully embracing it so much that it's making me uncomfortable. And the answer is probably yes.
Okay.
I do. It's Reese Witherspoon.
Sounds like a good one. What would be worse? This is just a tag on this. So much for rapid fire. But what would be worse? This enemy is real, or it's a made up thing that she uses for just entertainment?
I wonder that. Like, I wondered if she was doing like a grand experiment and was going to reveal it, which also made me really not want to be a part of it. Like, if I replied once or like liked it once, it was like, then I would be just a number in her game.
That's funny.
Yeah. So I think it would be worse if it was made up for sure.
All right. That's fun. What is the secret to success everyone knows but can't seem to do?
I guess, honestly, my first instinct was to say hard work, but that's a lie because some people just aren't afforded the opportunity to literally work hard.
Okay.
Like there's so many people who I like came up with or went to school with or grew up with who are just as smart and talented as me, who have had much more difficult lives and didn't have the opportunities that I was afforded. And also if you compared my life to a lot of other people, in my mind, I would say that I've worked much harder, but that's not true. So I don't know. I feel like hard work is necessary, but not sufficient. Yeah. And it's also boring.
Of course. I mean, that is the secret, is that it's a grind.
Yeah. It's a grind and it sucks. And like, I think that there's a lot of sort of like fun and like this like faux enlightenment when it comes to this idea that like a creative life is like fulfilling and fun. And like the phrase, like, if you do what you love every day, then you'll never work a day in your life. Mm-hmm. And I saw a tweet recently that was like, no, you'll work every single fucking day and you'll never have a moment where you're not doing it. And that's exactly what I do. Like, I have such a hard time watching television, watching movies, reading articles, because everything reading for some reason directly translates to how I pay my bills.
I see.
So, and that like the one thing that is not that is reading books. And like when I think about the idea that reading books would be my job, I have just made myself the most miserable person on the planet because it's all I have.
It's interesting. Yeah, I get this point is because you work in media and entertainment.
Yeah.
And a lot of consumption is media and entertainment based. Now you're just mixing your both your
like
rest
work and
time.
yeah.
What's that?
Work and pleasure are the same exact thing.
Yeah, and it's
like, what? Am I taking a break?
Yeah,
You
so
would
need
like
to go
this
to
because
museums
you're
or something, right? Like,
yeah,
or,
but that I still am like, because I did Artist's Way. I'm like, now it's an
I
artist
see.
state, and I can count it on my tally system. And you'll like this because you're a quantifier. I think.
Yes.
I have a friend who's a writer who, and I still haven't looked at it, but he was posting about it. But he kept a chart this year of every piece of entertainment or media he consumed.
Oh wow!
Which is obviously a very tedious thing to do, but I bet that you can really get something out of that.
All right, last question.
Yeah.
And this is related to something else we talked about that might have been cut off. What are you reading or watching or listening to?
Okay.
That really stands out. That's really, really good.
Okay. It's okay. It does stand out. So there you go. So I have to watch things, as we talked about.
Yes.
It's like my job. When something new premieres on like the Travel Channel, I at least need to watch like an episode and like understand why they bought that show and what makes that talent interesting and how that show is formatted, which makes watching TV really miserable.
Well, as an aside, I was just talking about, I went to a stand-up show last night with 3, I think, quite good comedians, and I really didn't enjoy myself that much.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just because it's a little too much like work and I'm doing too much analysis.
When people are like, hey, do you want to go see this comedy show? I'm like, bleh. Like the idea of going and like sitting through comedians and not going on stage is like, it's like misery.
Yeah, I
like,
get it.
I can't,
right.
yeah. And so what I'm watching right now is actually like, I don't watch the shows that people are watching scripted wise, mostly because I hate thrillers. I don't like to escape to worlds that are stressful.
Okay.
And it's work and it's tedious. Like I will never watch Bird Box. I will never I'll read
Westworld or
none of it. The shows that I like to watch are usually escapes to worlds where there are only women and the only real problems are interpersonal problems, and there's also beautiful food to look at. The best example would be Gilmore Girls.
Oh,
right?
okay. Oh, you know what? I'm having on the podcast, I'm having a woman who works on Gilmore Girls.
Oh, you mean my new best friend? So, but that's just say like my favorite show of all time. So like go from there. And then right now I'm watching a show. So my fiance I guess you would call him a video game influencer.
Okay. Congratulations.
We have a very successful life. He's a stand-up comedian. I'm a stand-up comedian. He's a video game player on the internet.
On Twitch?
No, he has a YouTube channel where he plays games as a pacifist, right? So he's like this, he like breaks the rules in video games and sort of creates like, what he'll do is he'll go and shoot in a game, because people don't know this, but you can like actually like pick your camera angles and go in and basically like shoot a script and then write it. And then he's an editor and a graphic designer.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, he was just nominated for a Webby for it.
What is his name?
His name's Jeremy, and his web series is called The Grand Theft Auto Pacifist.
Okay.
But then he also like has, he plays other games as a pacifist. But anyway, he's working on a game right now. I'm allowed to talk about it, but he's working on a new series about Red Dead Redemption, which is it's a Western.
Okay.
Right? And so we decided to really dig into Westerns together, so that one, he would kind of like, we watched like humorous Westerns, but then also like Buster Scruggs and things like that.
Oh yeah, I just watched that.
Just to like see where stories go, the jokes that have already been done. Blazing Saddles we rewatched. So we ended up, because he's also really great with like it, like he loves to have to like force himself into understanding other people's perspectives, like to a fault.
Okay.
And he picked this show on the Hallmark. It's a Hallmark Channel original TV series that you can watch on Netflix called When Calls the Heart. When calls the heart.
When, W-H-E-N?
Yeah, like when.
Okay.
Yeah, like when calls the heart.
When calls.
Yes.
The,
And
okay.
at first glance, it's like this really
It sounds
cheesy,
horrible.
Yeah, it's like this woman who is like she's rich. She moves out to this coal mining town during the pioneer days. She's a teacher. Like 40 men have just lost their lives in the coal mine. And so she's like this teacher who's like there to like kind of like help revamp and save this town. And she's in love with the constable who's been sent to protect her from her father. So there's just like weird patriarchal love story. And then it's this woman who has knowledge who comes to this town that's an old coal mining place that's like stuck in their ways. And so the more you kind of get into it, the more you're like, my favorite episode.
It's a good story.
Yeah, it's a great episode. Season 1, I think it's for the 4th episode. The women in town decide that in order to, like, their husbands died in the coal mine, and the women are like, we are going to go in the mines to save this town. And then if they do, if they like hit this like arbitrary goal that the evil mayor made up, they get to keep their homes. And it was so entertaining to me, this idea that the women could like literally put on their husband's coal mining gear, put on this like the light, and have a satchel for their lunch and go into this coal mine totally untrained. And because you can just learn how to do this in a day and then leave this entire village empty, right? That has to be, that you have to feed the children, that you have to like make bread with yeast. I don't even know what that means. You have to like beat clothes to wash them. And they, because they were in the coal mines, the whole town like comes to a dead halt.
I see.
Because nobody knows how to do the jobs that the women do every single day, but they were so easily trained to like jump into a coal mine. But by the way, they have zero power in this town and have they're not the ones who are holding the power, even though they're the ones who hold all the power. Meanwhile, it's a Hallmark Channel show, and it really, like, we literally, I'm not kidding, we'll come home from a show, or like we'll come home after, like, and be like, we'll get on the couch and be like, what's going on?
And then I assume you two have pretty in-depth conversations about the meaning and
all
implications
the time.
of this.
And it's just really fun to like sit with another funny person and make fun of television dialogue.
This is a random topical thing that may not even matter when this comes out, but I'm spending very little time on Twitter these days.
Yeah,
but occasionally
I signed out for the holidays for a reason.
I don't blame you. It hasn't been a good time, but you know who are surprisingly powerful people in this country this week is the TSA.
Oh yeah, that's a great call.
It's like, so these, so if you work for the TSA, you know, things haven't exactly turned out for you.
Yeah.
Right.
You make in Buffalo $36,000 maybe a year.
Yes. Thankless job.
Yelling
not
at
terribly
people all day.
rewarding. Yes.
You're on your feet. You're around a lot of germs.
Yes.
And a lot of miserable, rude people.
Yes. It's not a great job.
Yeah.
Yet it matters. And because of commerce in this country,
Yep.
flows through our airports.
Yeah.
And the TSA are not being paid right now. And so they're starting to call in sick.
Yeah.
And they're calling in sick for good reason, because they can't afford to pay childcare.
Yeah.
And so now they have to take care of their kids. And the only way that you can take care of your kids is to call in sick and so on.
It's exactly what
and
happens
it
in Coal
might
Valley.
become the thing that gets the government opened again.
Yeah.
And it just reminded me,
Because you don't
the when
think,
calls the heart story reminded
it's
me.
exactly that. You don't think about the people who are like slogging away, who are literally running the entire country. They are the literal backbone.
You can call them the lubricant, you can call them the ball bearings, you can however you want to think about that stuff.
And without it, the system comes to a dead halt.
It suddenly, again, those people in power.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So in any case, that just reminded me of that story.
This is why I love to watch When Calls the Heart.
Indeed you do.
Then you can troubleshoot all of the ways you would solve that problem if you found yourself an evil, curly mustached mayor, which that's the rules. And you have to wear like a foxtail.
Yes.
Or like like in the old episode where like Lucy, like
right?
I Love Lucy, she had, like
stole,
that. Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
It has like eyeballs. And you're like, that's fancy. So that's what you have to do. And just in case you're ever a mayor of an evil mayor.
Jen, this was a lot of fun. Thank you for dealing with my technical issue. Apologies
This has
to
been
the
so
audience.
fun. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this was great. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to visit petermcgraw.org for more information about our guest, show notes, and social media links. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share with others. Join Dr. Peter McGraw next week for another fun, fascinating conversation on I'm Not Joking.